You are not who you think you are, and that's not just a problem, it's the beginning of your salvation. That's the truth, harsh, undeniable, and necessary. Now, most people think that self-reflection is about feeling good, about sitting down with a journal, a cup of tea, and conjuring up some flattering narrative about their lives. But that's not self-reflection, that's self-delusion dressed up in polite language. Real self-reflection is brutal. It is confrontation with chaos. It's standing face to face with the parts of you that are petty, resentful, jealous, weak, and full of lies. And if you do it properly, if you really examine your life, it will shake you. It will hurt, it must hurt, and that's the hard truth. We avoid self-reflection because we know, deep down, that if we actually saw ourselves clearly, we'd have to change. We'd have to admit that we've squandered time, that we've betrayed our own values, that we've made peace with mediocrity. And change, as it turns out, is no small thing. It's not cosmetic, it's not painless. Change requires death, the death of who you were. But here's where it gets interesting. If you can endure that pain, if you can face your insufficiencies voluntarily, with your eyes open, you gain power. Not power over others, power over yourself. And that is the only kind of power that leads to freedom. Because you cannot fix the world if you cannot fix yourself. You cannot tell the truth to others if you're living a lie. You cannot pursue meaning if your life is an unexamined accumulation of convenience and avoidance. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living," and that's true, but he didn't say the examined life would be easy. He knew better. It's difficult, it's terrifying, but it's also redemptive. So I'm asking you, not for comfort but for courage, take an honest look in the mirror, ask yourself, what am I pretending not to know? What am I running from? What would I become if I stopped lying to myself even for a day? That's where you start, with humility, with truth, with the willingness to be torn apart, so you can rebuild yourself into something stronger. That is self-reflection, not a moment of peace, but the beginning of war with your own chaos. And if you're brave enough to fight that war, you'll discover something remarkable, that there is something in you worth saving. Something that can rise from the wreckage, and that is the foundation of meaning, and maybe, just maybe, of hope. Thank you. Here are 6 important key points from the speech, the hard truth about self-reflection. 1. Self-reflection is not comfortable. It's confronting. True self-reflection involves facing uncomfortable truths about yourself, not indulging in comforting self-narratives. 2. Avoiding self-reflection is rooted in fear of change. We fear honest introspection because it often reveals painful truths that require us to change, and change is difficult and demanding. 3. Real transformation involves psychological death. To grow, parts of your current identity, your habits, lies, and weaknesses, must be willingly destroyed and replaced. 4. Power comes from taking responsibility for your flaws. When you confront your shortcomings voluntarily, you gain self-mastery and the ability to live authentically and meaningfully. 5. You cannot improve the world without improving yourself. Personal integrity and order are prerequisites for contributing anything of value to society or others. 6. Self-reflection is the gateway to meaning and redemption. Through the painful process of honest introspection, you uncover your potential and begin a path toward hope, purpose, and self-respect. Most people believe that self-reflection is a soothing, even therapeutic process, something akin to a quiet evening with a journal or a gentle stroll through memory. But that image is a fantasy. Real self-reflection is not peaceful, it's disruptive. It forces you to see aspects of yourself that you've carefully ignored, denied, or rationalized for years. And when those things surface, they don't come with polite whispers, they arrive like accusations. Looking inward with honesty often means uncovering the darker elements of your personality, your resentment, your envy, your laziness, your cowardice. It means recognizing where you failed, not just by accident, but because you chose the easier path when you knew better. It's the realization that many of your problems aren't the fault of your boss, your parents, or your partner, but of your own unresolved character flaws. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's threatening. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You're forced to choose, either take responsibility and change, or continue to live with the knowledge that you're consciously avoiding what you know to be true. That inner conflict can be devastating, but it's also necessary. The discomfort of real self-reflection is the fire that burns away illusion. It exposes your foundation, and only then can you begin to rebuild. It's not a punishment, it's a process of purification. It's where accountability is born, and while it hurts, it is also a doorway. Because if you can endure that pain and not run from it, you become someone who can face reality without flinching. You become someone worth trusting, even by yourself. That is the real cost, and the real value of self-reflection. It demands everything from you, but offers something rare in return, the chance to be real. We avoid self-reflection not because we're lazy, but because deep down we're afraid of what we might find. There's a part of us that instinctively knows that true introspection doesn't just offer insight, it demands change. And that's terrifying, because real change isn't cosmetic. It doesn't mean tweaking a few habits or adding a new morning routine. It means confronting the possibility that the way you've been living, thinking, and justifying your actions might be fundamentally flawed. That realization cuts deep. It destabilizes your identity. If you've built your sense of self on stories that protect your ego, stories like "I always try my best," or "other people just don't understand me," then genuine self-reflection threatens to tear those down. You begin to see that maybe you haven't always tried your best, maybe you've coasted, maybe you've blamed others to avoid accountability. That kind of awareness hurts, and the natural reaction is to turn away from it. But when you turn away, when you avoid looking closely at yourself, you're choosing the comfort of ignorance over the discomfort of truth. You're choosing stagnation over growth. And while that choice might protect you in the short term, it slowly corrodes your potential. Because what you refuse to confront in yourself doesn't just go away, it festers, it grows in the dark corners of your life, shaping your actions in ways you don't even see. Facing the truth about yourself requires courage. It means risking your sense of identity. It means letting go of the version of yourself that's been built to avoid pain. But the alternative is worse, a life of quiet dishonesty and a self you can never fully trust. The fear of change is real, but so is the cost of staying the same. True personal transformation is not a surface-level renovation. It is a kind of death, not physical, of course, but psychological. It's the dismantling of the version of yourself that is no longer serving you, even if it once did. And that process is far more painful than people expect. We're often deeply attached to our identities, even the broken or dysfunctional parts, because they provide familiarity. They tell us who we are, how we fit into the world, what excuses we're allowed to make. Letting that go feels like losing a part of yourself, and in a very real sense it is. When you begin to change, you're not simply adopting better habits or thinking more positively. You're shedding old patterns of thought, behavior, and belief that are deeply woven into your sense of self. If you've lived for years as a victim, for example, then letting go of that identity also means surrendering the comfort of blaming others for your suffering. If you've been defined by your failures, then rising above them forces you to ask a terrifying question: who am I if I'm no longer broken? This is why many people sabotage their own growth. The pull of the familiar is stronger than we realize. Even suffering can become a sanctuary if it's predictable, but transformation doesn't occur without sacrifice. You must give up who you were to become who you could be. That's why genuine change feels like death. It's the end of oneself and the emergence of another. But this process, painful as it is also profoundly meaningful. Because on the other side of that death is rebirth, not into perfection, but into possibility, into a version of yourself that is more integrated, more honest, and more capable of bearing the weight of life with strength and purpose. There is a quiet but profound strength that comes from taking full responsibility for your own flaws. It's not glamorous, and it won't earn applause, but it is the foundation of real power. Most people spend their energy trying to manage how they're perceived, shifting blame, or finding excuses for their failures. But every time you do that, you give away your power. You reinforce the belief that your life is shaped by forces outside of your control. Other people, bad luck, unfair systems. That mindset might protect your ego, but it keeps you weak. When you finally turn inward and admit, without excuses, that you are the one standing in your own way, something changes. It's brutal, yes. It can be humiliating, but it's also liberating. Because once you see that your laziness, dishonesty, resentment, or fear are your responsibility, you also see that they're within your reach to fix. That's where power begins, not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. And this mastery isn't about becoming flawless. It's about becoming honest. When you know your own weaknesses intimately, when you've wrestled with them instead of denying them, you become more grounded, more centered. You stop pretending to be something you're not. That self-knowledge gives you the confidence to speak clearly, to act decisively, and to stand firm in the face of uncertainty, because you're no longer lying to yourself, and that makes you trustworthy, not just to others, but to yourself. It's not an easy path. Taking responsibility means carrying a burden, but it's a burden that strengthens you. Every time you choose to face your own deficiencies instead of hiding from them, you grow. And over time, that quiet, steady growth becomes something formidable. A character forged in truth and built to endure. The idea that you can make a meaningful impact on the world without first putting your own life in order is a dangerous illusion. It's tempting to focus outward, on politics, on institutions, on other people's failures, because it distracts from the harder task of confronting your own. But if your inner world is disorganized, conflicted, or full of resentment, then everything you touch will carry the mark of that chaos. You can't bring order to anything outside of you if you are ruled by disorder within. People often want to fix the world before they've taken responsibility for their own actions, relationships, or emotional baggage. They feel righteous, perhaps even noble, in their desire to create change, but unless that desire is grounded in personal integrity, it's often a cover for unresolved anger or a refusal to look inward. Real influence begins not with grand gestures, but with small, disciplined acts of personal accountability. Cleaning your room, telling the truth, showing up consistently. These are the foundations of genuine moral authority. When your life is in order, even partially, you speak and act with more clarity. Your words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they're backed by experience. You understand suffering, failure, and growth from the inside out. And that makes you capable of offering something real to the world, not just opinions, but wisdom, not just noise, but substance, trying to fix the world while avoiding self. Discipline is like trying to lead others while you yourself are lost. It's ineffective at best, destructive at worst, but when you start by ordering your own soul, by facing your shadows and striving toward virtue, you become the kind of person who can lead, who can build, who can heal. That's the only revolution that lasts, the one that begins within. Self-reflection, though painful, is the gateway to something far more important than comfort. It is the path to meaning and redemption. When you look at yourself honestly, without distortion or self-deception, you begin to uncover not only your failures but your potential. This process strips away the noise of ego and reveals what lies underneath, the raw material of who you truly are and what you could become. But to get there, you must walk through a kind of personal reckoning. You have to face the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore, the selfishness, the bitterness, the wasted time, and that confrontation stings. Yet strangely, within that pain is the first real sense of hope. Because when you admit where you've gone wrong, you open the door to doing things differently. You stop pretending and start repairing. That's where meaning begins, not in perfection, but in the willingness to grow. You begin to see that you are not defined solely by your past mistakes. You are also defined by your capacity to rise above them. Redemption doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from acknowledging your flaws and choosing to act anyway, more honestly, more courageously, more responsibly. Every time you face yourself and choose the hard path over the easy one, you build a life that is not only functional, but meaningful. Meaning isn't handed to you, it is carved out of the struggle with your own imperfections. And as you do this day by day, you begin to rebuild trust in yourself. You become someone who can stand up straight in the chaos, not because you're perfect, but because you are truthful. That is the real reward of self-reflection, not comfort, not ease, but a grounded sense of purpose, and a life you no longer feel the need to escape. 10 Rules to Transform Your Life in 2025 is a powerful motivational speech inspired by the wisdom and intensity of Jordan Peterson. This speech delivers hard, hitting truths and practical principles to help you take control of your life, confront your chaos, and build purpose through personal responsibility. Each rule challenges you to rise above excuses, embrace discipline, and create meaning in a world full of distraction and doubt. If you're ready to stop drifting and start leading yourself with courage and clarity, this is your call to action. Transform your mindset, transform your life, starting now.